I'm Ethan Scott.
I'm Nathan Starsik.
I'm Anthony Rosati.
And I'm Nafshat Nial.
Today we'll be telling you two stories about how me and Ethan went fishing. To take it from here will be Anthony and Ethan.
So about 2 years ago, it was my dad and my stepmom's wedding, and we were in the Dominican Republic in Punta Cana. The day of the wedding, we decided to go deep sea fishing, and I was the youngest one there, the weakest, and the shortest, so I didn't think I was going to catch a single fish throughout the whole trip. Then finally, we left to go out to shore, and it was a really rocky day, and everybody was just sitting in the cabin.
And they were all throwing up everywhere. So I run out of there, and I look back, and I just see this fat old man covered in white hair sleeping in there. His name's Al. And after I'm outside, a couple minutes later, a fish hooks on the line. Al wakes up. He runs out to the line. He starts reeling it in. After about 10 minutes of struggling with this fish, he does something crazy. He drops his pole completely and takes off all of his clothes because he thinks that it's going to make him lighter. Then a man working on the ship walks over to him and says, "No, pick up the pole." So he picks it up and starts reeling in the fish. After about another 20 minutes of struggling, he ends up catching a 2-foot mahi-mahi, which is the smallest fish caught on the trip.
And then bang, another fish hooks. The guy starts reeling in. Then he hands the pole to me. I'm like, what do I do? He's like, start reeling in the fish. So I start reeling in this fish. It almost pulls me off the boat. Then my dad grabs me. He sets me in this chair, and I just start reeling in. The fish almost pulls the pole out of my hands about like 2 or 3 times. And then finally, I got it within like 10 feet, and he just picks up the fish, and it's like a 5-foot mahi-mahi.
And it really made me feel like I was a stronger, better person overall, and that I could compete with all the adults because that was the biggest fish that we caught on the trip. And it really made me feel like I was an older, stronger, better man.
And now with our next story will be Nate and Nafi.
Back in 2012, me and my brother and a few of his friends went fishing. At the time, I was 10 and I had little experience with fishing. I was the smallest, youngest, and weakest of the group. And my brothers and his friends were 16, strong, buff, went fishing all the time, and I just felt like an outcast. But there was this one guy. His name was Mitch. He was a tournament winner. He was a pro fisherman. He's just really good at it, but he had a few odd tactics to fishing.
Our first stop was sturgeon fishing. So there are many different kinds of sturgeons, but the ones we were fishing can grow up to 80 inches and live past 100 years. These type of fish are a very thick, strong, and meaty type, which makes it good for game fishing. And if you guys don't know what game fishing is, it's basically fishing for a sport competitively.
We started fishing around 9 p.m. because sturgeon are most active at night, but we couldn't catch anything. It was all small, tiny fish that were 18 to 36 inches. I had the hardest time catching the smallest of fish. It was only 20 inches long, and I almost dropped the fish. But then, out of nowhere, I saw Mitch jump in the water, grab a fish, and smash it on the rock below 8 times before it died.
I finally gave up and went to sit down on my Chinese plastic folding chair. So I set my line far out with a big piece of bait on it, and I waited for an hour while my brother and his friends caught plenty of other fish. And I actually even saw Mitch basically fist fight a 50-inch sturgeon.
While I was sitting in my chair, I noticed something. My line was running fast. I grabbed a tight hold of it, and as soon as I did that, the line bent to a 70-degree angle, and it pulled me down to my knees and almost got dragged into the water. But Mitch, right before I did that, Mitch grabbed me by the collar and put me back in my chair, and I started reeling it in.
It took me 15 minutes to reel into shore, and it was one of the hardest, most aching moments of my life. And when it finally reeled in, Mitch jumped on it and yelled, "Nate, hand me the fish bat so I can club this sucker." So I grabbed a 7-pound bat-shaped stick and I threw it over to Mitch, and Mitch smacked the fish over the head with it. And when it was knocked out, I helped him pick the sturgeon up, and it was colossal.
We measured it was 60 inches long. It was the biggest fish we caught all day.
From then on, fishing was pretty easy for me, even though I still needed help picking up every fish I caught because I was pretty weak at the time.
That night, I learned how to skin and cook a sturgeon. We cooked 2 34-inch sturgeon, and it tasted awful to me. It made me sick. It had the same texture as a steak, but it tasted like rotten eggs. That day really made me feel more as a man and less as a child.
Thank you everyone for listening, and good night, America.